Hello, seventh graders. I hope you're doing well. I will see you tomorrow, and I am going to be excited to get back into the swing of things. But first, we have some more work to do with your realistic fiction pieces. And to get us started today, I want you to think about if you've ever spent the night at a new place, or at a friend's house, or even at a hotel or something, and you've woken up in the middle of the night and it's dark and you have no idea where you are. If you've ever had that happen to you, you know how disoriented you feel. But once the lights are on, you start to remember where you are and you start to feel comfortable again. Well, this can happen in writing too. And sometimes when I'm reading your writing, or when you're reading each other's writing, you might find yourself asking, where am I? What's going on here? So today I want to teach you that you need to be sure that you turn on the lights in your stories by grounding your characters in scenes. So you make sure that you are showing your character's actions as well as the place and the time, so that your readers don't have this disoriented feeling and ask, where am I? What's going on? So to do this, it helps to review what makes up scenes. This is something that we talked about in session 3. Okay, so if you remember, scenes are those small moments that have a clear setting that is woven throughout the moment. They have characters who are thinking, talking, or perhaps doing all of those things, and they also contain a character motivation and obstacle of some sort. So when you're writing a scene, it's really easy to get caught up in the dialogue, and you might tend to forget everything else that makes up a scene, the things that keep the reader grounded and knowing what's happening. So let's take a look at an example here. If you look at this example, it says, I was so embarrassed. I didn't know what to say. Just apologize, she said. I'm sorry, I said. You're forgiven. Let's go get a slice of cake, she said. If you're reading this, you should be asking, wait, where is this? What's going on? Some things work in this section. You do have characters talking and you can tell how they're feeling, but they're just sort of floating. So, you should be thinking, you have no idea where they are. You don't know where this is taking place. So you want to turn on the lights for your readers. Okay, ensure that the character is actually in a fully formed scene. So making sure that you don't only have talking, but that you also include what they're thinking, feeling, and moving within a setting. Okay? Those things are all so important that a scene can have all of those things and not have dialogue and still be considered a scene. So let's look at how this student example becomes even much clearer and emotionally richer when he added action and setting. So take a minute to read this to yourselves. If you need to pause it to read, you may do so at this time. But when this student started drafting this, he didn't actually know what his characters were doing. When he wrote the draft, his characters were just talking, and he hadn't quite envisioned the action, thoughts, feelings, or setting yet. So he decided to revise his draft to add these elements. He decided to make his characters walk home from school on a crisp fall day. That way, one of the characters could do stuff with the falling leaves and the acorns, and the other character could be fiddling with his jacket. So even though he expected when he was drafting this for these things to be fillers, really to hold up the talk, the actions ended up revealing the real story in a very important way. So as you're reading this, and after thinking about where the characters were and what they were doing, you should see some major changes from this draft to the first draft, or from the first draft to this draft, I'm sorry. So after reading this, do you see how these characters aren't in the dark anymore? You should be able to picture them. You should be able to see what they're doing and where they are. So let's read this section from my story. And as we read it, let's ask ourselves, will this make sense to my readers? Is this clear? And if you come to a place where the words seem to just sort of come out of the dark, a place where you suspect that readers or you yourself are feeling disoriented, you and your partner are going to have a chance to write in the air, adding references to the setting, characters' thoughts and feelings, as well as any small actions that the characters do. Okay? So this is something I wrote, and we started this a while ago. I walked down the quiet street on my way home from school, listening to Amelia and Nellie go on and on about the amount of homework that Mrs. Tilly assigned. I didn't think reading for 20 minutes and writing a page of my narrative was that bad, but the way these girls complained, you would have thought we had to write a novel. The leaves crunched under our feet as if to argue back with the girls, and I zipped my coat just a little more as the fall air made its way inside and sent a cool breeze down my back. I don't think the homework is too bad, I said quietly as I was slightly distracted and a little more concerned about the black dog that I saw up ahead standing on the corner of Dunbarton Road and Goshen Lane. So could you picture what was going on here? Were you able to see this place? Then let's continue to read on. I wonder where that dog came from, I thought. I've never seen him in the neighborhood before. Worry and confusion began to flood my mind. My heart started racing, yet I felt frozen in time. The dog doesn't seem to be wearing a collar, so he must not belong to anyone. Do you guys know whose dog that is? I asked Amelia and Nellie. What dog? The girls asked as they continued their ridiculous conversation about school. Forget it, I murmured. I gotta go. I'll talk to you later. I turned away from Nellie and Amelia and I started heading towards the black dog. As I approached the dog, he started to shy away from me and started walking towards the street. Losing hope, I became desperate and started running towards him, calling sweetly, "Here, pup, pup." He turned towards me a little, and it was then I noticed that he really wasn't wearing a collar. His fur seemed dirty and matted, and his eyes seemed filled with longing. So could you picture what was going on here? If not, turn and talk to your partner. Where did you start to feel in the dark? Where were you unable to picture exactly where I was? Go ahead and pause the video maybe for a minute or two while you have this conversation with your partner. Okay, writers, today you'll continue to draft and revise your story, shifting between the two processes. When you revise, you'll reread for all the goals that have become important to you. You want to make sure that your characters feel real and keep an eye on that deeper meaning of your story. You want to make sure that you don't leave your readers in the dark. If there is a section in your story that seems disoriented, you can revise it like we've done today, grounding it in scene by including actions, settings, thoughts, and feelings. Please be sure that if you expect to correct your draft, you know that those revisions that begin as corrections can often take a life of their own and become new creations. So maybe your characters start to do things that you never expected they do. Okay? You really need to just let those revisions and those changes take you by the hand and be open to allowing those to change something that you may have already planned for your story, but really surprise yourself and try to capture all of that new stuff. Okay, so for right now, you're going to pause this and you're going to spend the rest of the period working on doing just that, revising and drafting. I'm not sure what time it is in class right now, but use the rest of the period, and if you need to go into fourth period, that is fine as well. But I would say take about 20 minutes or so to draft, keep an eye on the time, and then come back to this video. So right now, you should have had some time to draft. So this is usually the time in class when I interrupt you anyway. But I wanted to introduce you to something interesting called the House on Fire test. This is a really interesting exercise that you can do when thinking about, if your house were to ever catch on fire, what things would you take? You really want to take only what is necessary. And, for me, that would be like sentimental objects, photos, and, all of the things that I find extremely important that can't be replaced. Writers can do this too. And when you draft and revise, you need to do the same sort of work. You need to think of this house on fire test and make sure that you keep what's important and get rid of what's unnecessary. So some things that are important to keep or include, you can read in the left-hand column here. Some things that you probably want to cut. And, just because you're cutting something, it doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that it's not helping to move the story along. And that's one of your goals. You really want to move that story along, keep the action going. You want to make sure that you're using your dialogue and your descriptions and your interactions to develop those characters, and also make sure all of this is leading up to some sort of theme. Okay, so please keep that in mind as you are working on your drafts today. Go through and see, like, if this were on fire, what am I going to keep and what do I need to cut? Okay? And so then when you have a second, please add this to your How to Write Compelling Fiction chart, and then you can get back to work. So right now, I would pause the video and take some time to continue drafting. And then when there's about 10 minutes left in class, please come back so that you can hear what else you need to do. All right, so hopefully you got a lot of work done today. I know you guys are working really hard. Many of you are probably done with your drafts and have already started revising. Others of you are probably doing these two things simultaneously. But one thing you need to keep in mind, you are really becoming skillful, self-sufficient writers of fiction. So I see a lot, or I hope a lot of you were checking on those points on the House on Fire test to get rid of stuff your stories don't need, to lighten them, to streamline them, to get to the points you want to make faster. I hope some of you may be choosing a bullet or two on the anchor chart and assessing your leads or checking how your stories are moving along in time and space. But the really important thing that I hope you're doing is really referring to these tools to help give you a focused, logical way to plan how you're either going to revise or draft. Okay, so for homework, no matter where you are in the process, try to get yourself to the end of your draft by, let me think here, by Thursday. Even if there are tons and tons of other revisions you want to do and plan to do, and maybe you don't have the time to do, but just start a to-do list for yourself then of those things. But I really want you to get to the end of your story by Thursday. And then on Thursday, we're going to focus on endings. And so I want everyone to have something to work with at this point. Okay, so that is it for today. I hope you had a good day, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.